First contact protocols, the Zephyrian Coalition. Fleet materialized from hyperspace with the precision of a well-oiled war machine. 23 vessels of various classes hung in the void like predatory sharks, their hulls gleaming with the dull sheen of military-grade armor. At their head, the massive dreadnought Inevitable Dominance cast its shadow across the smaller ships, its weapon arrays already charging for what should have been a routine extermination. Admiral Krexdal stood on the bridge of his flagship, his 4 arms clasped behind his chitinous back as he surveyed the tactical display. The coalition had been expanding through this sector for 3 standard cycles, and every encounter followed the same pattern. Jump in, overwhelm the primitive locals, strip the system of resources, move on. It was efficient, it was predictable, it was profitable. Scan complete, Admiral, reported Subcommander Thax, his voice carrying the typical Zephyrian confidence that came from never having lost a battle. Single vessel detected. Configuration unknown. Mass approximately 12,000 tons. Minimal. Energy signature, Krexdal S. Mandibles clicked in amusement. 12,000 tons was barely a patrol craft by coalition standards, his smallest frigate outmasted by a factor of 10. Broadcasting standard surrender demands. Sir, the communications officer announced. Pattern suggests a research or survey vessel, likely filled with valuable scientific equipment. Excellent, Krexdal rumbled. We'll strip it clean and add whatever crew survives to the labor pools. Begin approach Vector Omega-7 on the human research vessel Curiosity's Edge. Captain Alina Vasquez stood in what generously could be called a bridge, but more accurately resembled a converted laboratory. Banks of scientific equipment hummed quietly around her, while her crew of 15 specialists went about their daily routines. The ship had been conducting deep space surveys for 8 months, cataloging stellar phenomena and searching for signs of life. They had certainly found it. Captain, called Dr. Marcus Chen from his xenobiology station, his voice tight with excitement rather than fear. I'm reading 23 distinct ship configurations. The variety is incredible. Look at this whole composition analysis. At least 4 different technological approaches to space travel. Alina studied the massive fleet bearing down on them with the same calm she'd shown when discovering a new pulsar. Fascinating. Sarah, are you getting all this? Dr. Sarah Kim, their technology specialist, was practically vibrating in her chair. The energy patterns alone represent at least 3 generations of power core development. And those weapon systems, they're broadcasting on frequencies that suggest integrated targeting networks. Captain, this is the discovery of the century. Alina nodded thoughtfully. Probably more than that. Jim, open a channel. Communications officer Jim Rodriguez looked up from his console with a grin. Already done, Captain. Should I use the standard greeting protocols we developed for first contact scenarios? Perfect. Let's see what they have to say. The response came in the form of what the translation matrix interpreted as a surrender demand, accompanied by detailed descriptions of various unpleasant fates awaiting non-compliant crews. Alina listened to the entire message with growing fascination. Well, they're certainly direct, she mused. Did everyone catch those linguistic patterns? The grammatical structures suggest a highly hierarchical society, and those technical specifications. They mentioned Sarah. Are you analyzing their transmission methods? Already on it, Captain. They're using quantum entanglement communicators, but with a twist I've never seen before. If I can just isolate the carrier wave. Sarah's fingers flew across her console. Aboard the inevitable dominance, the coalition. Officers watched in growing bewilderment as the human vessel not only failed to flee, but actually seemed to be studying them. "Sir," Thax reported with obvious confusion, "they're conducting active scans of our ships. Deep penetration analysis. They're mapping our internal structures." "Impossible," Krextal snorted. "Their technology is clearly inferior. They probably don't even understand what they're looking at." "Admiral," the communications officer interrupted, "incoming transmission from the human vessel." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a human female with graying hair and intelligent eyes. She appeared completely at ease, as if she were greeting neighbors rather than facing down an overwhelming military force. "Greetings," Alina said warmly. "I'm Captain Alina Vasquez of the Earth research vessel Curiosity's Edge. We're conducting scientific surveys in this region and are absolutely delighted to make contact with you. Your fleet represents an unprecedented opportunity for cultural and technological exchange." Krextal's mandibles hung open. In 3 decades of military service, he had never encountered a response like this. Species typically either begged for mercy or died fighting. They didn't express delight at being outnumbered 23-1. "Surrender immediately," he growled, "or face destruction." Elena's expression brightened further. "Oh, we'd love to learn more about your military organization and tactics. Dr. Chen, our xenobiologist, has some fascinating theories about how different species approach conflict resolution. Would it be possible to arrange some kind of cultural exchange? We have extensive data on human civilization that might interest you." On the bridge of the Coalition battlecruiser, Stellar Wrath, Captain Veloth of the Chronari watched the exchange. With growing unease, the Chronari had been warriors for millennia, and their instincts were finely tuned to recognize danger. Something about the humans' casual response to overwhelming odds triggered every survival instinct he possessed. "Admiral," he transmitted on the command channel, "recommend extreme caution. Unknown species displaying abnormal behavioral patterns." Krextal's response was sharp. "They're clearly primitive. Veloth probably don't understand the situation." "Sir," Thax interrupted again, his voice now carrying a note of concern. "The human vessel just deployed some kind of probe network. 12 small objects spreading in a formation that gives them complete sensor coverage of our fleet." Elitness voice came over the come again, still cheerful. "We hope you don't mind the sensor probes. We want to make sure we get accurate readings on all your beautiful ships. The diversity of your engineering approaches is remarkable. Dr. Kim believes she's identified at least 4 distinct FTL drive technologies just from your hyperspace emergent signatures." Krextal felt the first stirring of genuine unease. "What are they talking about? How can they analyze our drive systems?" "Admiral," the sensor operator reported, his voice climbing higher, "those probes are transmitting data back to their ship at rates that should be impossible with their apparent technology level. And sir, ... they're adapting. Each probe is modifying. It's scanning parameters in real time based on our countermeasures." Alina appeared on screen again. "We're getting some wonderful data. Would it be possible to get closer looks at your weapon systems? For purely academic purposes, of course. We're particularly interested in how you've solved the targeting coordination problem across multiple vessels." That was too much for Captain Veloth. "All ships, this is Stellar Wrath. Something is very wrong here. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Non sense." Krextal snapped. "Weapons officer, fire a warning shot across their bow. Show them we're serious." The massive plasma cannon of the inevitable dominance spoke, sending a bolt of superheated energy screaming past the human ship. The blast was carefully calculated to miss by several kilometers, while demonstrating the fleet's overwhelming firepower. Alina watched the energy discharge with obvious fascination. Remarkable, Sarah. Did you catch the plasma containment field? Modulation, and that firing pattern suggests they're using gravimetric targeting systems. This is incredible. Got it, Captain, Sarah replied excitedly. The containment field collapsed in a way that suggests they're using artificial gravity wells for guidance. If I can just reverse engineer the frequency patterns. Crackstall stared at the screen in disbelief. The humans were analyzing his weapons in real time, treating a demonstration of lethal force as an educational opportunity. Sir, Thax whispered, scanners show the human ship is now emitting energy patterns similar to our plasma containment fields. They're duplicating our technology. Elena's voice came over the com once more, bright with discovery. Thank you for the demonstration. We've managed to adapt your plasma containment principles to our own systems. It's given us some interesting ideas about defensive applications. Oh, and Dr. Chen wanted me to ask about your species' social structures. The coordination required for fleet operations this size suggests fascinating evolutionary adaptations. The bridge fell silent except for the humming of instruments. In the space of minutes, the humans had gone from helpless prey to something that could apparently absorb and replicate coalition technology just by observing it. Admiral, Captain Veleth's voice carried across the command channel with barely controlled urgency. My tactical computers are showing the human ship's energy output increasing exponentially. Whatever they're doing with our technology, they're doing it fast. Sub-Commander Thax looked up from his console with wide eyes. Sir, the human vessel just generated a containment field identical to our plasma cannons. They're not just copying the technology, they're improving it. Crackstall finally understood the true nature of what they faced. These weren't primitives to be conquered. They were something far more dangerous. Learners, all ships, he ordered. His voice steady despite the growing dread in his chest. Combat formation. We end this now, before they learn anything else. Elena's voice came over the com one final time, and though her tone remained pleasant, there was something new beneath it, a hint of steel that made even seasoned coalition warriors shiver. We understand you want to fight, she said calmly. That's unfortunate, but we're prepared to defend ourselves. Fair warning, we've learned quite a bit about your technology in the past few minutes. We hope you're ready for some surprises. As the coalition fleet moved into attack formation, none of them noticed the small modifications the Curiosity's Edge had made to their sensor probes. Modifications that would soon teach them the true meaning of human ingenuity. Asterisk. The human factor Admiral Crackstall gave the order with the grim certainty of a career military officer. All ships, coordinated strike. Target the human vessel. Maximum firepower. Leave nothing intact. 23 warships opened fire simultaneously, their combined weapons unleashing enough energy to crack a small moon. Plasma bolts, particle beams, and kinetic projectiles converged on the tiny human vessel in a display of overwhelming force that should have ended the engagement instantly. The energy storm struck something invisible 50 meters from the Curiosity's edge and simply ... stopped. The plasma bolts froze in mid-flight, suspended in brilliant geometric patterns around the human ship like deadly artwork. The particle beams bent at impossible angles, forming spirals and loops that defied physics. The kinetic projectiles slowed to a crawl, their momentum absorbed by fields that shouldn't exist. Fascinating, Elena's voice came over the completely unperturbed. You use brute force approach to space combat. Very effective, we're sure, but we've made some improvements to your plasma containment technology. Dr. Kim discovered that by reversing the polarity and adding a few harmonic frequencies, we can create suspension fields. Thank you for providing the energy to power them. On his bridge, Kregstar watched in horror as the suspended weapons began to move. Not randomly, but with purpose. The frozen plasma bolts rotated slowly, their blazing cores now pointing back toward the Coalition fleet. Impossible, he whispered. They're controlling our weapons fire. Subcommander Thax's voice cracked as he reported, Sir, energy readings from the human ship have increased by 800%. They're using our own attack to power some kind of defensive matrix. Captain Velathes, transmission cut through the command channel with barely controlled panic. All ships, evasive maneuvers. The suspended ordnance is targeting our vessels. The humans had turned the Coalition's devastating first strike into a weapon pointed back at them. Aboard the Curiosity's edge, Dr. Sarah Kim was having the time of her life. Captain, their targeting systems use quantum entanglement markers. Each ship has a unique signature that their weapons lock onto. I've isolated the frequencies, and, oh, this is brilliant. I can reassign the targeting parameters. Show me, Alina said calmly. Sarah's fingers danced across her console, and on the main display, streams of data showed the quantum signatures of each Coalition ship. With a few keystrokes, she began reassigning targets. There, she said with satisfaction. Now, their own weapons think they're the enemy. Alina nodded approvingly. Dr. Chen, what's your assessment of their psychological state? Marcus looked up from his xenobiology readings with a grin. Panic, mostly. Their heart rates, or whatever passes for hearts in their species, are off the charts. The hierarchical command structure is starting to break down. Look at this traffic analysis. They're arguing among themselves. Indeed, the Coalition command channel was becoming chaotic. Captains were demanding new orders, while their tactical officers reported increasingly impossible readings from the human vessel. Admiral, Captain Veloth's voice cut through the noise. Request permission to withdraw. This situation has moved beyond conventional warfare parameters. Negative, Kregstar snarled, though his own confidence was cracking. We outnumber them. 23-1. Continue the attack. Elena's voice came over the general frequency, addressing the entire Coalition fleet. We understand you're frustrated, but there's really no need for violence. We're scientists, not warriors. We're just trying to learn. For instance, Dr. Chen is fascinated by your species' apparent need to establish dominance through force. It suggests interesting evolutionary pressures. However, she continued, her tone shifting slightly, we should point out that we've now analyzed your weapon systems, your shield technologies, your power generation methods, and your communication networks. We've also noticed some interesting vulnerabilities in your ship designs. As if to demonstrate, one of the Coalition frigates suddenly found its weapon systems, cycling offline and back on in a pattern that spelled out hello in standard galactic script. The frigate's captain screamed orders at his crew, but the weapons continued their unauthorized greeting, completely ignoring all override commands. Dr. Kim's voice came over the Coalition's own command frequency, having apparently cracked their encryption in the time it took to make coffee. Sorry about that. We're still learning your computer systems. Fascinating architecture, by the way. Very logical, but not very adaptable. We've made a few improvements. Across the Coalition fleet, ships began reporting system malfunctions. Not destructive ones. The humans seemed content to demonstrate their capabilities without causing permanent damage. Engines briefly ran backwards. Gravity systems created localized anomalies that left crew members walking on ceilings. Life support systems began playing what sounded suspiciously like human music. "This is impossible," Krextall muttered, staring at reports flooding in from his ships. "How are they accessing our systems?" Sub-Commander Thax looked up from his console with the expression of someone whose worldview had just been thoroughly scrambled. "Sir, I think they're using our own communication networks against us. Every time we try to coordinate, they learn more about our systems." Elena appeared on screen again, looking genuinely sympathetic. "We understand this must be confusing for you. Your technology is quite sophisticated, but it's designed around very rigid parameters. Humans tend to be more flexible in our thinking." To demonstrate, the Curiosity's edge suddenly accelerated at rates that should have been impossible for its size, dancing between the Coalition ships with movements that defied inertia. As it moved, it left behind a trail of something that looked like glittering dust. "What is that?" Krextall demanded. His science officer ran rapid scans and paled. "Sir, it appears to be ... nanobots. Billions of them. They're attaching to our hulls and analyzing our armor composition." Elena's cheerful voice confirmed their fears. "We're just taking some samples for analysis. Don't worry, they're completely harmless. We're particularly interested in how you've solved the problem of hull integrity during hyperspace transitions." Captain Veloth watched the tiny robot swarm over his ship's hull and made a command decision. "All ships, this is Stellar Wrath. I'm ordering immediate withdrawal. These humans are too dangerous. Belay that order," Krextall roared. "We are not retreating from a single primitive vessel. Primitive." Elena's voice carried a note of amusement. "That's interesting. Dr. Chen, add that to your cultural analysis. They seem to equate technological complexity with advancement, but can't adapt when faced with unexpected approaches." Captain Veloth watched the tiny robot swarm over his ship's hull and made a command decision. "All ships, this is Stellar Wrath. I'm ordering immediate withdrawal. These humans are too dangerous. Belay that order," Krextall roared. "We are not retreating from a single primitive vessel." "Primitive." Elena's voice carried a note of amusement. "That's interesting. Dr. Chen, add that to your cultural analysis. They seem to equate technological complexity with advancement, but can't adapt when faced with unexpected approaches." As if responding to her words, the suspended plasma bolts that had been frozen around the human ship suddenly blazed to life again. But now they were reorganized into complex, geometric patterns that pulsed with mathematical precision. Dr. Kim's voice carried across all frequencies simultaneously. "We've been studying your plasma technology, and we think we've found a much more efficient configuration. Would you like to see?" Without waiting for an answer, she triggered her creation. The plasma formations exploded outward in precisely controlled bursts, each one perfectly calibrated to disable rather than destroy. Coalition ships found their weapons systems fused into useless slag, their engines producing beautiful but non-functional light shows, their shield generators creating pretty patterns instead of defensive barriers in less than 30 seconds. 23 warships had been reduced to floating museums of their own technology. "There," Elena said with satisfaction. Now we can talk properly without all that aggressive posturing. Dr. Chen has prepared a fascinating presentation on human social development that we think you'll enjoy. And Dr. Kim has some ideas for improving your faster-than-light drives that should increase efficiency by at least 40%. Admiral Krextall stared at his tactical display in absolute defeat. His fleet was intact but completely helpless, disabled by creatures who treated warfare as an educational experience. What are you? He whispered. Elena's expression grew. Thoughtful. We're explorers, Admiral. We see something new, and we have to understand how it works. We can't help ourselves. It's just who we are. She paused, then smiled. The question is, what are you going to do now? We can repair your ships and send you on your way, or we can spend some time learning from each other. We promise it'll be fascinating. Captain Veloff was the first to respond, his voice carrying a mixture of respect and resignation. We choose to learn. One by one, the other coalition captains echoed his decision. Even Admiral Krextall, faced with the complete transformation of everything he thought he knew about warfare, finally nodded. Very well, he said quietly. Teach us. Elena's smile brightened. Excellent. Dr. Chen, prepare the cultural exchange protocols. Dr. Kim, start working on those drive improvements. And someone put on a fresh pot of coffee. This is going to take a while. As the disabled coalition fleet hung in space around the tiny human vessel, word began to spread across the galaxy of the species that turned first contact into a learning experience. The Zephyrian coalition would never be the same, but then again, neither would anyone else who encountered humanity's most dangerous weapon, boundless curiosity. The humans had learned something new that day too, that the universe was full of teachers, even when they didn't know they were teaching, and that discovery, like all human discoveries, would change everything. Asterisk.